All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian Primer at Tribeca Trade Group, and it is just after the close on Friday, the 15th, and what a day. S&P was up almost 1% on the day. Well, I shouldn't say almost 1%, but up 70 basis points, just to be fair. The Qs were up about the same, 73 basis points. IWM lagged a little bit on the day, but was still up 0.5%. Bonds just off the, just down fractionally, down just 10 basis points. And gold was also down a quarter of a percentage point. So, pretty crazy stuff. We've had 6 straight gains now for the markets. It is unbelievable. Of course, risk disclaimer up in front of you. Everything that we're going over is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Let's get to the week's performance, and we'll talk a little bit about we'll talk a little bit about today's price action, but just wanted to kind of review what happened for the week. And this is part of the Tribeca Trade Group weekend video that not video, but just a couple slides that I put on our weekend video for game plan. So I always put out a weekend video, and of course we have a game plan and watch list going into the week, which I think did pretty well overall. But these were some of the notes and strategy that we had for last week. So for performance for the week, SPY was actually exactly the same as last week, up just about 1% for the week, 0.9 for the week. So, we kind of lived through a few choppy days. We had a few days where market breadth kind of turned down. I'll look at that for today just to show you how that looked. But I think pretty strong. We've got an indicator that is on our screen that you could see was positive all day long, right? You could see the last couple days, negative, 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 and then finally, obviously the strongest day of the week in terms of market breadth. This was Monday. This was Monday, where market breadth even wasn't that strong. Tuesday it was negative, Wednesday positive, then negative. But you could see, really strong. So let's get to the performance first, and then again, like I said, I'll come back. But I left the Dow in here. The Dow, I think DIA was up 1.6% last week, finished up 1%. That led in terms of the U.S. indices. Interesting, small caps actually were red on the week, or call it flat, but down 0.1%. Emerging markets, we did not have that same global breadth as what we've been having. Emerging markets were up today. They were up 0.8%, but that was not enough to overcome the slide for the week. Also, IFA, which is international developed, also basically flat, just like IWM, down 0.1%. Believe it or not, bonds were the big performer this week. They were up 2% and up twice as much, more than twice as much as what the S&P did. So pretty interesting there. Also, gold was up 6%, even though, like I said, that was down for the day. So again, this is that's 5-day performance. Best performing sectors, ITA, which is so different groups, I think, than were up here last week. Last week, if you remember, it was actually oil and gas names that outperformed, and Chinese internets, and those, it's funny, that's just kind of flips around this week. That's what underperformed for the week. Metals and mining, some of those trade sensitive areas like metals and mining, steel, transports, I would say even Chinese internet names, they actually finished the week down for the week. So again, like I said, breadth wasn't the best all week long. In some areas really kind of cooled, but you had aerospace and defense that was going back to the left side, names that were really outperformed. Healthcare, which really pleased, up 2.5%. I had a nice video on CNBC for a trade idea that was by far just took off like a rocket ship today, and was strong all day long. And then Trump talked about I guess more transparency in pricing, and managed care really took off. But if you watch that video, I had talked about how this group looks, the breadth within healthcare, meaning biotech, managed care, medical devices, all really strong and looking good. Gold miners were even up 2%, and you got utilities, REITs. Some of those defensives kind of came back into play. So again, I would call this with the overall market finishing up 1% for the week. I continue to kind of say rolling bull market, which I think is just pretty interesting that it's different groups. So again, if you're kind of we've talked about this, and I think I talked about this up here. If you're having difficulty with these rotations, I should have it in here someplace. Think about playing. Again, that was a decent portion of last week's video. Playing SPX, NDX, Dow Jones index spreads. Rather than trying to pick stocks, because it is difficult right now, right? I mean, if you were in some of those groups, even though the market was up 1%, but if you picked incorrectly with some of the underperformers, you may have had uh, you know, maybe a little bit of a tougher week, considering a lot of these groups were down. International, like I said, international really did not have strong breath here. A couple areas like Greece, which was my biggest holding. No, I'm just kidding. I don't own any Greek stocks, but this is up 3.4%. And again, like a lot of, I would say, I see a lot of like frontier markets in here, right? So a little bit more speculative than emerging markets. Hong Kong was down 5%. I think the protests really took a toll there this week. You can see the China ETF, also mainland shares. ASHR was down 2.8%. So again, bigger emerging markets were down pretty decently, and I think that kind of foots back to the performance here of EEM down 1.3% for the week. What was going on here in Nigeria? Up very nicely, up 7%. Very strong there. All right, so let's talk. So that's the week's performance. Kind of just quick, wrap up for the week, just to kind of see. And again, I think very impressive, 6 weeks in a row. So I mentioned I would look at market breadth. Right, this is how this shaped up for the day. Again, much different than what we saw basically every day this week. The Dow had 24 stocks that advanced, 6 that declined. S&P, wow, 397 names that advanced, 107. New highs, new 4-week highs, very strong. New 52-week highs, very strong. NASDAQ, not quite as, this was, clearly skewed. Not so much for the NASDAQ, and 4 new highs, 3 new lows. Interesting. And you could see even 4-week highs wasn't that strong. So interesting, NASDAQ is not showing the strength right now. Again, even though it matched what the S&P did today, definitely there was underneath the hood a lot stronger names, or a lot stronger market breadth in the S&P than the Nasdaq. So something I think notable there. So yes, this was the story of the day. Again, very pleased with this breakout you got in this. This got even more extreme if you look at IHF. I mean, unbelievable. Right, and this goes with UNH, which helped the Dow a lot. Look at the volume in this thing. How's this weekly chart looks like? I think this managed, stopped right at the top of value, which is resistance for UNH. So we'll see what that does next week. I'm just looking at sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place because it's the weekend and it's been a long week. But S&P, the one thing to note here, which I talked about pre-market, we are now officially overbought. If you use the RSI is now 73. So I've been talking about this for a while, beating a dead horse, but prices remained above the 5-day moving average every day since, I guess this is 1022. I mean, that's even like such a small close below it. But again, that's why I have this moving average on my charts. It kind of just tells me short-term trend. So basically, if you kind of leave out this day, which just was barely a close below the 5-day moving average, this started all the way back on 10.8. I mean, that's been a killer run. Of course, there's no doubt about it, right? I'm not going to be negative here, but if you don't think that we're overbought here, you may have to have your head examined a little bit. Not to say that we can't get a little bit more overbought, but I mean, we're cooked right now. So again, it's been a wonderful run. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have taken some locked in some profits along the way. I'll show you. One of the things I don't show all the time because it's for members. But this is a portfolio that we started back in August. We started this, so it's actually doing pretty well. We had a little bit of growing pains in the beginning of this portfolio. I got caught in growth names in the rotation. I was in a little bit too much, skewed into growth names and hiding places in terms of the trade war, and kind of I had to adjust this pretty quickly. But we're doing pretty well, I think. I've taken the idea is this is kind of a trend philosophy. Follow trends, but set targets too. I'm kind of riding the last piece of Apple, which is now up 28%. But you can see we've had some real nice movers, like Tesla was a name that I added before it reported earnings. So we're up 37% in that one. So again, some really nice winners. Of course, we've got some losers in here. Amazon, which is I almost took the whole thing out. I left 1% in, but interesting. This name's just not performing. Kraft, which I got beat up in yesterday because I own it both in options and in stock. Obviously, that kind of I got dinged yesterday on the Goldman downgrade. But again, a lot more names that are doing well in this portfolio right now. So very pleased with how it's been performing. Again, minus the kind of call it the glitch with being in a little bit too many growth names. But I think we've really, you know, rotated into some value names really nicely. Honeywell. I'm surprised this is not up more, but maybe it's come in since we took some targets in this one. Up 5.6%. We've got GE in here too, which is also doing nicely here, up 6%. All right, guys. So that's it. So yeah, just showing my current holdings here. Not something that I've done, but what I do is I rebalance that portfolio. If that's something that interests you, we go over. I did one small rebalance this week, and that's where I put in Kraft Heinz, which kind of hurt a little bit. But I wanted to take out a name that hit our upside target too, which was MRVL, which we did pretty nicely, taking that. The majority of the position out. But if that's something that you're interested in having somebody kind of watch a portfolio and rotate in, rotate out, take targets where they should be, basically all mechanical. You could check us out at tribecatradegroup.com and you could get access to that. We do that whole trade. We do the whole portfolio trade through Motif Investing, and it's working pretty well since we started it a few months ago. All right, guys, so that's it for the weekend. We will be putting out, of course, a weekend video and watch list for next week. But I think, I really didn't put out too many names that I'm interested in the last couple days because I think we're a little bit stretched. So, usually what I like to do is put out 2 ideas a day. We had a nice winner in the room with Boeing. I'll tell you, these VPOCs, right? If people don't know what these are, you could always ask me. But Virgin Point of Control, it's basically where a lot of buyers and sellers have set up before. But you could see on Twitter, I said 372.5 was the spot that I was shooting for. So we got that today. I put on a trade right at the end of yesterday, took it off today. A couple names that I'm watching for next week. This will probably be on the watch list. This Slack Technologies. I wonder if they're going to change the symbol because it kind of feels like it's WeWork. But notice this is called a divergence, right? When a name makes a new low and the RSI improves, notice this, right? So got oversold here. This move down. Notice how it improved the RSI, and even better when it made a new low. So that's called a divergence. Right? You could basically draw a trend line in here. So it's kind of helpful. It's kind of confirming that the bottom may be in. But I still would like to see this get above reclaim this new 50-day moving average that has just appeared. But I think this is kind of telling here a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on that name. So that and today was like a lot of momentum names, right? This LK went nuts today, up 25% today. Piton actually came off. But of course, this name, some of these newer names, they've got a pretty decent short interest. But pretty nutty some of the moves today. All right, guys, thanks for watching and have a great weekend.